Hello, scrappers, recyclers, and everyone who's interested in scrapping and recycling industries. Welcome to Shark Scrapper Live, where every week we talk about precious metals, industrial metals, safety, and all manner of subjects related to the scrapping and recycling industries. It is great to be with you today. We've got some really interesting subjects to talk about. Before we get into that, I want to say hello to the folks that have already joined us. David, Philly, Roger at CU Scrapping. Great to have you all here. Let's see, let's get rid of that one. Sorry, the volume was up a little loud on my backup device there. Truck Fan 52, Scrapping Irish. Great to have you all here. Let's see, who else? E-Waste, Mike is in here. Great to have you here, Mike. Hope you're all doing great today, and hopefully staying safe with our weather that is cranking along here. And speaking of that, I'm going to change things up a little bit today, and we're going to start off with our safety talk for today. And our safety talk today is brought to you by the weather. What you're looking at here is the National Weather Service radar composite for the United States. And in here, you can see that we have got a pretty serious situation developing across the middle part of the country. We've also got some severe weather building up in here. All right. So one of the things that I encourage everybody to do throughout the course of your normal everyday routine is to have some process where you check the weather. I'm not saying you have to check it every hour on the hour or something like that. There's a lot of ways that you can keep up with what's going on in the weather. And it's important because, during the winter, you have situations like we're dealing with right now, where you have this huge snow and ice potential stretching from Kansas to Delaware that can have a serious impact on what you're doing. If you're down in, Tornado Alley, you've got to pay attention to the possibility of severe weather, tornadic activity. In Southeast especially, you've got to worry about hurricanes during the hurricane season. But of course, those hurricanes, well, they have a nasty habit of, moving on up the East Coast or coming in and slamming us, when they recurve. So paying attention to the weather in general is really important. Now, there's a number of ways to do that, of course. The National Weather Service has some really good tools. You just go to the National Weather Service website, put in your zip code, and it'll bring up your forecasts. Many people like to use private forecast, commercial forecast agencies. They get a lot of their data. In fact, they get most of their data from the National Weather Service here in the United States. And then they put that into local forecasts that are specific to your town, your city, your county. Or you can go to some of the really good social media forecasters that are out there. I really like Ryan Hall, y'all. When there's a storm event going on, he is right in there on top of it. He has storm chasers that link in with him. He's got meteorologists that are on the staff, and they do a very good, no drama and no commercial weather forecast and track during severe events. They're up right now. They're live right now talking about the potential for the severe weather down to the south and the winter storm moving across the center of the U.S. What I like about Ryan Hall is there's no commercials and there's no drama. I mean, they're scientists, they're meteorologists and professional storm chasers, and they really do a great job of presenting the information, as opposed to some of the other folks that, they're out there doing the clickbait. Oh, this is the storm of the century or whatever. And I don't really enjoy that kind of stuff a whole lot. So you really want to be paying attention to, who you're watching and what they're saying. And, just have a good understanding of what's going on with the weather. Now, there's some other tools that you can use. One of them that I really like is these little radios. We're going to uh, do this here. All right. So let's blow this up. So we have all kinds of these little radios that you can get. This one is very cool because it has a solar panel on top to charge it. It also has a hand crank, so you can always hand charge it by the hand crank, as well as a battery that you're charging up. And snow accumulation up to 1 inch. And it's already tuned to the weather, the NOAA weather broadcast. Now I can move it to other channels as well, but this is good because when you lose power, you can still keep track of what's going on. If you don't have one of these, I would encourage you to find them. They're relatively inexpensive on Amazon, and they're very useful to have around. All right, so pay attention to the weather, plan accordingly. I'm not saying that you got to panic and things like that, but, just plan accordingly. If you know there's a bad storm coming, then, don't plan to be out street scrapping that day or something of that nature. So just, pay attention to that kind of stuff. I've actually gone to another level of weather preparedness. It turns out that where we live here in North Carolina, up in the mountains, the infrastructure is a little bit older, and we lose power here more than I would have thought. So I've got a generator being installed, and I'm going to fork up the bucks to have one of those automatic gas generators, whole house generators from Generac installed. So they're going to be out here next week to lay the generator. Then it'll take them, they got to run the cables and bring in an inspector and stuff. So by the middle of the month, I will have a generator installed so that when we lose power from weather events, which is usually what happens here, we kick right in and, we'll be okay. And because we have natural gas off of the street, it'll just kick in and run, and it'll power the house until the weather comes back on, until the electricity comes back on, and then it'll shift back over to the grid. So we are going to be better prepared in the Shark household. All right, our next subject is our primary or our precious metal for today. And as you saw in our lead-in, our precious metal for today is going to be gold. But before I get there, I want to run a real quick check and see what kind of comments have been popping up here concerning the weather. Yeah, Mike, actually, E-Waste Mike was the guy that introduced me to Ryan's stream. So I thank you for that, Mike. And yeah, I know he's going to be live all day. So when folks get done either here or hopefully you're stick around for the Scrapping Irish live portion, you can go over to Ryan Hall's channel and check out what's going on with the weather. E-Waste Jill is talking about some of the weather channels really play up these storms because they're going for advertising. So, you gotta take that one into account. Roger, I remember that blizzard. Boy, howdy, do I remember that blizzard. Man, that was something. And those of you that were old enough to remember that storm in '77, that's not one that you forget too quickly. That's for sure. JR Cat, yeah, he remembers that storm. He was around for that one. Hey, Patrick Williams, welcome. Great to have you here. Let's see. TJ, you seem like I'm trying to remember the name seems new. So let's see. Heck, that is when you get the best scrap. All the other scrappers stay home. Well, That's one way to look at it. Okay. Yeah, yeah. Oh man, that's funny. Um, let's see. Patrick Williams is saying they got 3 inches up here and no scrapping for him today. Yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you. I wouldn't be out scrapping if I had 3 inches of snow on the ground. I was one of the things when I was looking for the new shark cage. When I was down in Florida, it was about the heat. Up here, I had to make sure that I had uh, heat for when it was cold and air conditioning for when it was too hot. Down in Florida, all I had to worry about was when it was too hot. Uh, bu- 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 uh, TJ is saying he remembers that storm. It's when his school bus went in the ditch. Yeah, I bet you that was fun. All right, let's see what else we got going on here. Oh, TJ saying that he's been following for about a year. Okay, yeah, and you commented on the chat. All right, I got you. Yeah. So great to have you commenting, man. Great to have you commenting. Homestead Scrapper, he said it's funny when the hobby scrappers balk at career scrappers working through the weather. Well, there's some weather that, yeah, absolutely work through it, right? I mean, when I was down in Florida, we would get thunderstorms almost every day, all throughout the year. And so it was, if you didn't go out scrapping when there was a thunderstorm, you weren't going to do any scrapping in Florida. So you always had to develop your own risk factor for how far away the thunderstorm was going to be and that kind of stuff. So certainly there's a tolerance for weather that everyone needs to pay attention to. Let's see here. All right. Well, we're going to move on now to our gold discussion. Precious metals for the day. Gold is it. Everybody that has been around for a while, you know that I enjoy using, or at least referring initially to the AppMex uh, page for gold and silver. I am not sponsored by AppMex, but I do frequently use AppMex when I purchase my physical gold and silver, which is the only way that I recommend holding precious metals. And I do recommend that everybody have a little bit of precious metals in your portfolio. There are plenty of other sites that I have used, JM Bullion, those kind of folks. They're out there as well. They're good sites as well. I'm not saying that, AppMex is the best. It's just the one that I ended up using the most frequently. Um, they have some nice charts that you can use here. We're looking at the silver chart, or excuse me, the gold chart for the 24-hour period, and you can see gold is down. And if we look at the 3-day period, we can also see that gold is down. Came up a little bit, but now it's down again. If we look at the week, we see that gold had this little bit of a dip early in the week, and then after that dip, we were climbing up, looking good, and then we started dropping off again. So let's pop over here now to the trading economics chart and throw up our candlesticks. Now, again, this is not a place to learn about candlestick interpretations, how to use them for forecasting. I like candlesticks. I've studied some information. If you want to learn more about using candlesticks, I urge you to study them, research them in other sources because they can be very informative. This is a 1 year. Let's go back here to the week. So we're looking at what we were just on. And you remember from the AppMex chart, we had the dip that climbed up and then fell off. And you can see the red that's in here. Let's kind of zoom in a little bit on that fall off part. And we can see we've got some really long candlesticks here showing that the prices dropped pretty quickly. These are 15 minutes. Each candlestick represents 15 minutes of trading. So what you can see is that within 15 minutes, here we're gonna zoom in a bit more. Starting around the 3rd of January, look at that. In 15 minutes, it dropped that far and dropped that far and dropped that far. Now it tried to recover and then it started dropping again. Now in here, we're seeing that there's a lot of small movement going on in here. Not a lot of trading going on, during the weekends here. So I don't get real excited about that kind of business near the end. So we'll keep an eye on what's going to happen with gold here. Um, we're at some pretty good numbers right now, right? Let's take a look at our 50-year look, and gold is doing pretty good, really. Think about it. For most of us, this is our lifetime that we've been involved in this game, and gold is doing really good right now. Now, excuse me. So, what does that mean relative to you and scrapping? Well, most of the gold that we get as scrappers is from our e-waste, from our printed circuit boards, the CPUs, the RAM, and such. So prices are pretty good right now, and if you've got circuit boards and RAM and such, and you're trying to decide if you should sell it, I would say, why not? I mean, prices are pretty good. But you know what? Let's just go ahead and get an idea of where some of the big name experts think gold is going to go. And one of the things that I like about Trading Economics website is you can look at the forecast tab. And it's a little bit hard to see here on this big one, but let's just go look at the 6-month window. And now what you can see is that they're saying that gold is going to go up. So they're showing it with a bit of a rise in their discussion. They're expecting gold to trade at 26.57 by the end of the quarter, and they're looking forward to 27.59 sometime in the next 12 months. Now, that helps to inform us as well as scrappers, because some people will say, "Oh, I'm holding out for some really new highs. I'm going to hold out and make a real killing when it gets really high." But a price change of that amount for spot gold is not going to have a huge impact on the boards. I mean, yeah, it's going to cause the buyers to increase their prices, but not so much that you're going to, make a killing by hanging on to it, and you risk, uh, not getting good prices now. So my suggestion uh, is that if you have circuit boards, RAM, and such that you're holding on to, I would say go ahead and start moving that material. Go ahead and start selling it around. Start building up some cash. If you are a little bit nervous, you can always hang on to some of it. This is a pretty common tool that I use, where I will hang on to around 10% of some of my higher end copper, some of my higher end gold bearing materials. And that way I keep my cash flow moving. Again, I'm a business, I have to have cash flow, so I have to sell stuff. But yet I still have a little bit in reserve for if we get some sort of really nice spike that comes in here. Let's see, what are you all doing with your gold? What are your thoughts on the gold market? I'm going up here to the comments section again. And I want to go up to where I saw the last weather comment, and that way I know we're in the uh, gold comments. I think we're here with TJ, where he says he's been buying a ton of silver this last month. He just has a feeling, and then if he's wrong, oh well. TJ, at least you're owning it, right, man? That's what I appreciate. Own it. Um, there's a lot of people that they'll do something like that, and then the market falls out, and they're like, "Yeah, but they all told me that it was going to go through the roof." And so I really appreciate and give a lot of credos to folks that own their decisions. Loeffler, hey, welcome. I didn't say hi yet. He's saying if you don't hold it, you don't own it. Absolutely true. And that's the difference in physical gold and silver versus paper. There's a lot of people that think they're investing in gold and silver when they purchase these certificates, but the truth is there are way more certificates out there than there is physical gold and silver. So just imagine if you had to cash that in and everybody else was trying to cash that in and they couldn't pay you for it. If you own that gold and silver physically in your hands, you don't have to worry about that. Let's see, what other gold comments do we have out there? Loeffler, are you up 33% on the year, or are you expecting to get 33% on the year? If you're up 33%, good job, man. Good job. JR Cat says that he is overstocked on lead and brass. I'm wondering if some of that lead includes everything that I sent you last year. Has your postal carrier forgiven me for that yet? Oh man. Let's see. Yeah, TJ's saying that the gold fluctuations are too much for him. I don't blame you, man. I don't blame you. I have a little bit of gold, not a whole lot. Most of my precious metal is in silver. And I got to admit, most of the gold that I own is just because I've always wanted to have a gold eagle and a gold Britannia and a gold maple leaf, So when the prices were good, I went ahead and bought some just because it's like I always just wanted to have them. Let's see. Other comments on. All right, Scrooge McDuckin is saying that he's holding out for retirement. Makes sense. Makes a lot of sense. No issues there. I get it. And this is what I do in my retirement because I suck at retirement. So I have my own business and keep doing it, keep staying active with it. So, as I like to tell people, I suck at golf and I can't catch a cold fishing. So I might as well run a small business in my retirement. All right. Well, a lot of good comments there. And I'm glad to see that there are some folks that either have silver or gold as a part of their portfolio. It is really important to have some physical silver and gold in your portfolio, and the actual gold and silver rounds or coins that are things that you can take to a bullion buyer, whether it's APMEX or JM Bullion or one of those folks, or a coin dealer or a pawn shop. That's how you're going to be able to get your money back if you need to have it. So definitely good to do. Ron, welcome, and Scrapping in Scotland, welcome. Great to have everybody here. Um, oh yeah, so yeah, just a real quick comment here. Yeah, the premiums on sovereign coins can be a little bit steep, so you need to shop around. This I bought these back when gold was a reasonable price, and I was able to get some pretty reasonable premiums. But the premiums are always going to be higher. Well, always. I hate those kind of generalities. Generally speaking, premiums will be higher on Britannias, Eagles, the sovereign coins. But the flip side of that is you can almost always sell a sovereign coin easier than a generic round or bar. And then the other point that Loafer's making is that premiums are really high on fractionals. So if you're buying a quarter ounce or 1/10 ounce gold fractional, the premiums can be excruciatingly high on those as well. So you got to watch out for those premiums. We've talked about that, in the past, and I'll always harp on that because that is so important when you are buying your silver and gold. Let's see. Truck fan saying that he wants to get more gold. Yeah, don't we all? Yep, yep, I hear you. Okay, so that's our discussion on gold. Appreciate all the comments and feedback. Let's move on now to one of our other favorite scrapping metals, and that is copper. Boy, howdy, do we love copper. Um, and that is what's going to lead us into a primary point of our discussion today, which is going to be on scrap laws and theft. So we're going to hop right in here to first talk about copper prices and what's going on with copper. So right away we are in the trading economics copper section. Basically, they're saying that futures remain below $4 a pound. We're seeing it just a bit above right now. Remember, the summary was written a little while, a couple days ago. So we're up a little bit over $4 a pound, holding near their lowest level since August of 2024. And it's because of the strengthening dollar that's weighing on commodity prices. This is an important note right here. Let me highlight this here. A stronger dollar makes commodity pricing in greenbacks more expensive. Uh, that's why it weighs down on gold. Plus, there is also some concern about the potential for tariffs with the incoming administration, and so people are trying to decide what that's going to do on copper. And then, just to throw a little more confusion in the mix, we have the Chinese who said that right here that they oops let's do this instead, that they pledge a more proactive macroeconomic policies and lower interest rates on the year ahead. So essentially what the Chinese did was they're going to lower the tariffs or the import duty or taxes on copper scrap and aluminum scrap coming into China. So that's going to have impact on copper prices as well. On top of that, we need to look at the inventories of copper. So I went in, I was looking at the inventories are generally rising. So the London Metal Exchange is currently showing 172,850 tons. And that's their highest level since 2023. I've seen other reports where inventory levels across the world are at their highest level since 2020. Depends on the exchange, because I also saw where COMEX and Shanghai were down a little bit. But overall, the inventories are high. And so, of course, what you expect in a proper supply and demand world is that if the inventories are high, which says that you have a lot of supply, your demand is going to kind of come down, which should bring your prices down. But we've got the potential for these tariffs by the incoming U.S. administration that could have an impact on the copper prices. So we're in for a bit of a ride here, is basically what this comes down to. Right now, on this chart, we're looking at 1 year's worth of copper prices. You see right here, 1 year. And we're going to go to the candlestick chart. If I push the right buttons, we're going to go to the candlestick chart. And here we are. Each candlestick represents 1 day's worth of trading. You see a lot of red here from May of 2024, dropping all the way down to September of 2024. We see these prices down in here. Now, one of the things that is always good to do is to take a look at what the trends of the troughs are. And you can see the troughs tend to be moving for the last year, been moving up. And unfortunately, the peaks are also moving down. So we're kind of coming into a price range in here. So we're moving into this price range here where it doesn't look like Between the floor and the ceiling, we've got a whole lot of room to maneuver in there. Uh, but anything could change that could drive these things. But right now there just isn't anything to suggest that we're going to see a lot of movement one way or the other. So what we're probably going to have is this range, and let's go real quick. We'll take a look at the forecast for copper. So again, I'm not, these folks at Trading Economics, they have a lot of algorithms, a lot at play that is, suggesting what's going to happen. They're saying that copper increased $0.05 per pound or 1.3% since the beginning of 2025. And what are they forecasting? Copper is expected to trade at 4.06 by the end of the quarter. And looking out for the year ahead, 4.29. So, does that really tell us, is that really a big difference? Here we are, this is the price range that we've been in, right? This is where we've been bound. Maybe this is a better thing to go with the square here. Even their forecast is inside of this range that we've been dealing with for a while now. So, what does that tell us as scrappers? Well, it tells me to keep my copper moving, is what it tells me. Um, because I'm not street scrapping and doing big industrial stuff anymore, I'm focused on electronic scrap. I don't get the big, huge cables and HVACs and things of that nature. So it's not like I'm getting the big uh, weight of copper that I used to get when I was down in Florida. So for me, keeping copper moving is just a part of my cash flow gain anyway. Now, I will keep, as I have always kept and preached, keeping 10% of my higher grade copper bare bright or number one. I will keep 10% of that behind. I like to accumulate a certain percentage of strategic reserve in my copper because at some point copper could break out again. If we look at the 25-year history of copper, we see that we get these highs up in the $5 range. And if we look at the trend of the peaks, boop, here we go. If we look at the trend of the peaks, they're going up. So there's no reason why we shouldn't expect in our continuing lifetimes. And if you're a younger scrapper than me, you have a better opportunity for $5+ a pound on the spot price, which means your scrap price will be up higher as well. So I recommend keeping some of your better quality copper behind as a strategic reserve and then selling your other stuff for cash flow. Keeping it moving, right? Your insulated copper wire, your number twos, that kind of stuff. It's good cash flow. Prices are pretty good right now. Yes, there's going to be some ups and downs in the year ahead, and it should trend more towards the high side. But if you play the game of hanging on to your copper, all that means is that you're going to miss the high. So keep your copper moving, keep a little bit aside for that strategic reserve. And then it's a little easier, a little more, relaxed as you're trying to make your sell decisions. All right, so let's just pop back here to our 1 year chart real quick, and let's take a look at the comments that folks have been dropping in here on copper. Let's see, what do y'all got to say about copper? All right, I'm going up here. I'm looking back here in the ba, 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 ba. Scotty Hahn, welcome. That's a new name to the show. Great to have you. Uh, Hopefully you enjoy the show, and you'll be back with us on future shows. Let's see what else do we have here on Copper Cruiser Mac Cruiser. Welcome to the show. Always great to have you here. Copper always goes down towards the spring and summer. You know, it's funny, Cruiser, because a lot of our friends over in the United Kingdom and Europe, they talk about how copper goes down just before the winter holidays because that's when all the tradespeople are selling their copper to get their bonuses, and then it picks back up again. I think a lot of those, what you bring up is a very important point, and that is you as a scrapper need to know your locale and how your yards have seasonal variations in their pricing that may or may not have anything to do with what's going on in the larger scope of world pricing. So that's a really important part. Remember, our yards usually have contracts that they're trying to fill. And so they'll have contracted with a refiner to deliver, X number of tons of copper every month. And so if they're not getting the copper that they need to fulfill that contract, they may lower or increase the price that they pay so that they get the copper so that they meet the contract, because the fines and penalties for not meeting their contract can be really severe. So there's that factor involved that a lot of times we don't think about as the small time scrappers. Even those of us that are small time professional scrappers, we're not worried about contracts. So, like the way that the big yards are. Okay. Let's see here. We're going to go down here. Ba-ba-ba-ba. Any other comments on? Hey, Ralph, great to have you here. Ralph Morick, welcome to the show. I'm looking for copper comments. Copper comments. JR Cat took in 50 pounds of insulated number two. We got 80 cents a pound. Okay, always good to get the price checks going. Mike, E-Waste Mike decided that he's a younger scrapper than me. That's not real hard to do, Mike. Scrappin' Lou is yearning for the days when he can sell his 90% copper pennies. Yeah, I wonder what's going to happen there. In the United States, it's illegal to scrap currency, to destroy currency. And so a lot of folks hang on to older pennies, 1982 and older. 1982 was a transition year, and so you have to pay attention to what mint the penny came from. Will tell you, how much copper is in it. But if it's older than 1982, it's going to have a lot of copper in it. And there's a lot of folks that are hanging on to those pennies for the copper, but you can't legally melt that copper or sell it off for scrap because it's still legal U.S. tender. So that's an interesting one that folks are trying to decide. Oh, let's see. Scrooge McDuck, and we are going to get into that here in just a few minutes. So hang on to that thought. That's an important one. And Ron is waiting for prices to rise for his copper. Okay, Ron, good call. Hey, like I said, I'm not trying to tell you, what each of you should do. You each have your own process, your plans, your risk factors. I'm just trying to help you make informed decisions when you make those decisions. Let's see here. What other copper comments? Homer's Reluctant Odyssey commented that his yard didn't have the pre holiday copper rush like last year. Okay. Alrighty. And Patrick is saying Bear Bright 720 and number two 620 a kilo. So for my US viewers, don't get confused. Is that going to be euros per kilo, Patrick? So just don't get too excited. That's not dollars a pound there. All right, so copper, good discussion on copper. Let's head on over now to what I'm sure is going to easily take up the remainder of our hour, and that is copper theft and copper laws. Now, what really motivated this was a 2025 law that went into effect this year, in January 1st in Minnesota. What Minnesota did was they created a law that says in order to sell copper, any kind of copper, you have to have a copper seller's license. And that license is going to cost you $250. Now, I went ahead and put up a poll on YouTube to get a feel for what people thought about this. Basically what I said was, the question was, essentially, how do you control theft? Do you increase the penalties and fines associated with theft? Do you control the sellers? Do you control the buyers? Or some combination? And it was a split decision. The about 40-ish, 40 plus percent were saying increase the laws and the fines, stricter laws and fines, with pretty much the other half of folks saying some combination of control on the sellers and the buyers. And then there was a certain amount of, mix in the middle. So, what I thought would be really interesting is to go ahead and have that discussion here. As a professional scrapper recycler, the last thing I want to see is more laws and regulations on our industry. And hey, ICAST, welcome from Tennessee. Great to have you here, man. There are already a significant number of laws and regulations that impact those of us who are in the business professionally of scrapping and recycling. Part of it is the legal requirements that we incur. Part of it is environmental regulations that we incur. Part of it is zoning regulations and requirements that we incur. And so, from the perspective of a professional scrapper and recycler, there's already a lot that we're paying attention to. And I'm a small time player. Think about the combination of legal requirements, zoning requirements, and environmental requirements that a large scrapyard has to pay attention to, or a refining metal, plant, so a mill or a refiner. So there's a lot of regulations involved in this business. And it brings us to this discussion of how do you control theft? Because unfortunately, the world is full of a bunch of scumbags out there, low-life thieves, who, for whatever reason, believe that it's okay for them to steal things that don't belong to them. All right. Now, I'm not talking about, the famished person who, got laid off from their job and is starving to death. And so they steal a loaf of bread. I'm talking about the dedicated thieves who believe that it's okay to go around and steal wire out of light poles, take stuff from people's front yards, cut catalytic converters out from underneath of other people's cars. These are the people that I have no patience or tolerance for them whatsoever. And the result of these kind of people, is that the folks that we vote into office, all right, our elected officials, whether they be city, county, state, or federal, have a requirement to try to come up with ways to control this. I mean, that's what we do when we elect these people is we say to them, part of your job is to create laws to keep all the rest of us safe and, taken care of. We may not always agree with the laws that they came up with, in which case, we go ahead and vote for somebody else. But, that's what our legislatures are, that's part of what they're supposed to do. And so when you think about it, there's three ways that you can control theft. One is to have strict laws governing theft. And there are. Every state in the United States, every state in the modern world has laws against theft. Those laws, they generally classify theft into categories based on how much what the value is of the material that was stolen. Now, because this Minnesota law is what got us going here, I want to go ahead and I looked up in Minnesota what the different levels of theft are. Misdemeanor theft is less than $500, and it comes with up to 90 days in jail and $1,000 fine. Gross misdemeanor theft is $500 to $1,000. You can get 364 days in jail and $3,000. Felony theft is over $1,000, which comes with 5 years and $10,000. And a felony aggravated, they've got different things that become aggravated theft. So it's like 5,000 to 35,000. It goes up to 10 to 20 years in jail and $20 to $100,000 fines. Theft of explosives or firearms or trade secrets or controlled substances. Vehicles, of course, is a special category. I also thought it was interesting that they specifically have an aggravated offense for stealing things from dead bodies and graves. So the laws are there in Minnesota to control theft. But when I was researching it, I also found some places where they were talking about how easy it is to defend yourself against a charge of theft. Right? So, unless the police are really doing their job right, and they've got camera and, document footage and, that they can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that you knew that the copper that you were taking didn't belong to you. You took it anyway. It was in your possession. It can be very challenging for law enforcement to actually prove theft. A lot of people, they make the claim that, oh, I didn't know I couldn't take this. I didn't know it wasn't mine. I mean, to me, it's amazing, how some people can get off from these laws. And I can imagine that the courts must have a pretty good backlog of various charged people. And, it's like if the cops or the detectives don't have the right proof, then, the person's getting away with it. I'm sure that, like every state in the union, the police will go through these periods of really cracking down hard. I know they would do it in Florida, where there would be these really hard crackdowns on theft of copper or what we called controlled items in Florida, HVACs, catalytic converters. And for a while, they would crack down really hard, try to get some of the really bad players behind bars for a while, scare the would-be people into not doing that, and then it would move on. So the laws are there, challenging to enforce in some cases. Now, the other way is you control the sellers, and that's one of the things that Minnesota just did, right, with this copper seller's license. $250 a year. Now, I thought this was interesting when I was studying this. Here, wait a minute, I got to find my notes here. That $250 license, and you know what? This is North Carolina. Let's see. Here we go. Wait a minute. we have over here Minnesota. If you live in Minnesota and you want to look up the laws, you can go to, they call it the Office of Revisor Statutes. Your scrap metal laws and stuff are under 325E.21. All right. And you've got everything that you want to know about your laws. And what I thought was interesting, as they've got all the record requirements and things that have to go on here. Even beer kegs are regulated, catalytic converters, we knew about that. But beer kegs, North Carolina has laws about beer kegs as well. So here is the license required for scrap metal. It's under subdivision 2C. And what I thought was interesting was that in this law, they must have recognized that they wanted to give homeowners or other folks the opportunity to sell. And I'm going to do this real quick. I want this to stay on longer. In order to give the average Joe an opportunity to sell their stuff on the first Friday of the months of April and October, from 8 to 5 p.m., a scrap metal dealer may purchase up to $25 of scrap copper from individuals who do not have an approved license. So I think that's a nod to the homeowner or the small person, in order to let them sell the stuff a couple times a year, stuff that they may generate at home and those kind of things. Otherwise, you have to get a license from the commissioner, and the license is going to be $250. And let's see, here's all the stuff that you have to have when you apply for your license. I noticed that it can take up to 30 days to get your license. So, if you didn't put in your application back in the end of 2024, you could be waiting a month or two before you get your license in 2025. That's your sell. That's kind of like the extreme of controlling the seller. The other thing that states do when they try to control the seller is they say, and it seems like it's a requirement on the buyer, but it says that the seller has to present a government issued photo ID, right? So your driver's license or your state identification card. Some states even say that you have to be 18 or older, or have someone, a parent, with you when you sell the material. So that is another way to control the seller of the scrap, by forcing, that identification of the seller. And then the other way that you control theft is by controlling the buyer. We think of the scrap yard or the small professional like myself who's buying material. We frequently get into the situation where we are required to keep records. Now, scrap yards, you're all used to this. If you go to a scrap yard, you know that they have your photo ID, your driver's license, the license plate of your vehicle. It's either already on file, or every time you go there, they're getting a copy of it, or they're taking a picture of your vehicle license plate. And then when you get that pay stub that tells you everything you bought, well, they're keeping that record as well, because they have a legal requirement, depending upon the state, to keep that record, so that if the sheriffs want to show up and look, investigate it, they have the record is available. This became somewhat of an issue for me when I was down in Florida, because I had gotten large enough. It was funny. It was like, I kind of knew that I was starting to make my mark when a sheriff showed up. And it was funny as all get out. It's like, they called me the day before. They said, "Hey, we'd like to come out and talk to you about your business." And I said, "Yeah, sure." And then they showed up. There were three of them that showed up. I'm like, guys, what's going on here? And the one sheriff said, "Oh, these two are they're new to this group, and so they're kind of in training." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's cool." So anyway, basically in Florida, when I was buying from other businesses, I did not have to keep the same records that I had to keep the receipts and all the transactions. But if I was buying material, computers, electronic scrap from a person, what they call a peddler in Florida, I had to get the photo ID. I had to have a full description of all the material, every computer, serial number, et cetera, et cetera. So, and the way that I had to do that was through a specific software package that reported, linked its data to the sheriff's department. And the license for the software package was pretty expensive. So my solution was, all right, well, I'm not going to buy from peddlers. I'm just buying from businesses. I would get free material from people, and that was okay because it's trying to control theft. And so, how many thieves are going to steal something and then give it to you for free? If I got it for free, I didn't have to record it. If I paid money from a business, I had to record the business name and contact, but I didn't have to record each and every single item and serial numbers and such. If I bought it from a consumer, a peddler, yeah, then I had to go through all of that, and I had to put it up on this electronic database. Now, obviously, the reason for doing that was the police wanted to be able to go back and say, if they got a call for a large theft from, somebody came in and stole all the computers from a data center or a lawyer's office or something like that, they could then go ping on each one of the buyers in the area and see if someone brought in any of the computers or a large volume of servers or something like that. So it all made sense. Here in North Carolina, I have to pay attention to very similar laws. It's controlled under Article 45, and they're all under 66 38 something. Now, if you go to Article 45, you see pawnbrokers, metal dealers, and scrap dealers. And we go down. Here's the pawnbrokers and cash cover converters. We go down here to precious metal business. Now, this is interesting because when I'm looking at when I look at this, I'm thinking to myself, am I a precious metal dealer? Because the e-scrap is all about the gold, but as I read the definitions, I do not believe that I fall into the category of a precious metal dealer. So I'm not worried about being included under that category. We go down a little bit lower and we get to the regulation and sales of and purchases of metals. And here is where I feel like I've got to pay attention to these requirements because they have a requirement for copper, and I do get copper wire and I don't get copper pipe much anymore because, I'm not in that game, but I can get copper sheeting, copper tubing, insulated copper wire. So, I fit into this category. So I am paying attention to these regulations as they apply to me as a buyer and seller. And it was a good thing that this came up because one of the things I figured out is that I need to contact the local sheriffs and ask them, let them know that I'm in business and give them an opportunity to come talk to me and see at what level do I have to start reporting to them. It doesn't appear as though there's a charge for me to become registered with the sheriff here, but I may need to, and this is where it could get expensive. I may need to get into their software system. And that's generally speaking where things can get a little bit pricey because then you have to get the software license, and that in Florida anyway, that software that they were using got pricey real fast. So I'm going to have to dig into that a little bit more and pay much closer attention. All right, so let's see. We had a number of comments that were coming in as this discussion was going on, and we're already at the 3 o'clock point. Irish, we're going to go a little bit longer here, but we'll be heading over to scrapping Irish. I just want to go through comments here because I know there were comments coming in as we were going through this, and I really want to have this discussion. So. Let's see, I think we're up here. TJ is coming in, and TJ is saying that in Iowa, they made stupid laws years ago that you had to have a $10,000 license and inspection to recycle appliances. So everyone just dumps them on the back for it. That's one of the unfortunate side effects of that, the unintended consequences of some of these laws, right? That stuff then goes into the trash or it goes out in the woods or what have you. And then they probably have laws that try to prevent that from happening. So it can become this weird kind of catch 22 because of the unintended consequences of this, of the challenge. E-Waste Mike is saying if you bring in $100 worth of copper, they will pay you 25 and put a 3-day hold on the remaining unless you have a business. Yep. And a lot of times too, they have to pay you with a check. So when you read these laws, a lot of times what it'll say is up to a certain amount they can pay you in cash. Anything beyond that, they have to pay you with a check. And sometimes that check gets put on hold or, it takes 3 days. The other thing that I noticed was some states specifically say that if you're in the purchase of buying metal and such, you cannot also cash checks because they want to get around that immediate cash thing. So that's another way that they're trying to control this. Let's see here. Scrooge McDuckin is saying that he had to get an off-site storage to stop this from happening. He lives in a rural area and the city looks down on scrappers. Okay, yeah. In the UK, they have no cash sales at scrap yards. So that way they always have the paper trail because they have to give you the check or the electronic deposit. Yep. And again, here in the US, a lot of the yards are doing, a lot of the states and therefore the yards are doing the similar kind of things. They issue a check or electronic transfer, which means they have all your information so they can go in and track you down if they need to. TJ's making the comment that, there's cameras all over the place. So it should be easier for the police to catch the thieves. And yeah, I know there's so many cameras, right? So many cameras and there's facial recognition. And so I have to believe that can help a lot with what's going on. Of course, one of the challenges that cities and the counties run into is the thieves are stealing the wire out of light poles and traffic fixtures. And are you going to put a camera on every single one of those? So, and it's not hard for thieves to be able to tell where the cameras are. So yeah, it's that becomes a challenging one as well. I personally think that the fines and penalties are too lax. I really think that they ought to make copper and aluminum theft. Either like in Florida where they had controlled items, but they ought to make them aggravated theft. Make it, any kind of copper that you steal, it's automatic 2 years or something like that. And again, maybe I'm just a little bit harsh. Let's see. Yeah, TJ, that's another good point because what you run into now is that you're going to have people that will pay for the license, and then they're going to turn around, and it's almost like it creates a black market, if you wish, or a red market, because they're going to then turn around and pay lower prices to the scrappers that don't have the license, and the people that paid the money but are not businesses, they're kind of hoping they don't get caught, because they might be buying from people that don't have the license. And if they buy from people that don't have a license, now they're in trouble as well. So they're going to have to be really careful, because if the cops catch someone doing that, well, now you can be in trouble. So you got to be careful playing that game too. I think one of the things that people make comments about on my post is that, well, folks will just go across a state line, and yeah, there's nothing to stop someone from in Minnesota from just crossing the state line, especially if it's not a bad drive. And then the result could be that scrap yards pop up right along the state line to try to take advantage of that. Now you have a whole nother problem going on, don't you? Yeah, Ron, I think just about every state in the union requires a photo ID. So, yeah, if you show up without one, they're not going to deal with you. In Florida, it even was that you had to be in a vehicle. Um, and I remember it was a big deal because, it was like, well, is a bicycle a vehicle? And, eventually somebody said, well, yeah, bicycles are vehicles. So you would see some of these folks showing up at the scrapyard riding their bicycle. Um, yeah, Roger is commenting on TJ's statement there that if you get caught doing that, you could lose your license and get fined. So, yeah, that's a difficult one. Let's see. And Jill's going to find out tomorrow if they're going to take her copper. Yep, that could be a good one there. Let's see, what is this? Well, Jill, you don't want to do that either, because that's not the right answer, because burnt copper, you can't, yards aren't allowed to buy burnt copper. Again, just about every state in the union has laws against buying burnt copper. So you don't want to just be burning the copper either, right? I mean, trying to get around a theft law by violating an environmental law and just doing something stupid, that's not a good idea either. So yeah, don't be burning your copper. Just don't do that. HH Recycling says that they have to be in licensed vehicles and have a photo ID. Yep, that's pretty common. Hey, you know what? I tell you what, folks. These are some great comments. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to be going through all these comments, and I'm going to see if I can't turn this into a video to talk about this some more during the week, because it's a really important subject, and it's one that so many scrappers have to deal with. I really appreciate the discussion and the comments here. If you want me to deal with this again next week, we can spend some more time on it again next week. Just let me know. Drop me an email at sharkscrapper@gmail.com, or drop a comment in one of the videos coming out this week. I'm happy to revisit this again next week, because it really is an important discussion to have. The other possibility is, maybe we'll talk about this while we're over in Ireland, because that's what's going to happen. I am late heading across the pond. So if you have autoplay enabled, when I turn this one off, we are going to be automatically redirected across the pond to Ireland, where we will join Scrapping Irish and carry on some interesting discussions. And he brings people up on the panel, and we have free-ranging discussions. So there's no reason why we can't continue this discussion for our next hour over in Ireland. So if you don't see us over in Ireland, have a safe week. Watch out for the weather, and we'll see you all on the next one.